I walked up the path to the house I had paid for with a heart full of hope and a custom-made birthday cake balancing carefully in my hands. It was a Paw Patrol cake, chocolate with vanilla buttercream, because that was Leo's favorite. 5 years old. My grandbaby was 5 years old today. I could still remember the day he was born. How tiny and fragile he looked in the incubator, his little fists clenched tight like he was already fighting the world. I had been the first one to hold him after Jasmine. And I remember whispering into his ear that his Nana would always have his back. I had kept that promise. I had paid for the nursery furniture, the stroller that cost more than my first car, and the private preschool tuition when Jasmine insisted the public schools weren't enriching enough. I reached the front door and shifted the cake to one hand so I could ring the doorbell with my elbow. I also had a thick envelope in my purse's savings bond for $10,000. It was my tradition. Every birthday, I put money away for his college fund. By the time he was 18, he would have enough to go anywhere he wanted without a dime of debt. I smiled, anticipating the sound of his little feet running to the door. The shout of Nana. That always made my heart squeeze. But when the door opened, it wasn't Leo. It was Jasmine. She stood there in the doorway, blocking the entrance with her body like a security guard at a nightclub. She was wearing a silk robe I knew cost $300 because I was the one who paid the credit card bill it was charged to last month. Her arms were crossed over her chest, and her face was set in a mask of cold disdain. "Jasmine," I said, my smile faltering just a little. "Happy birthday to the big boy." "I brought the cake." "We don't need your cake, Vanessa," Jasmine said. Her voice was flat, devoid of any warmth. "And we don't need you." I blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "It's Leo's birthday. I always come over for cake." "Not this year," she said. "This year we're having a private family celebration. And you aren't invited." "Not invited?" I laughed, a nervous sputtering sound. "I'm his grandmother. I'm the one who paid for this house you're standing in." "What are you talking about?" "That's exactly the problem," Jasmine snapped. "You think because you throw money around, you own us. You think you can just buy your way into our lives whenever you feel like it? Well, Marcus and I talked and we decided we need boundaries. Your energy. It's toxic, Vanessa. It's negative. And we don't want that around Leo on his special day. Toxic. Negative. 2 days ago, I was the best mother-in-law ever when I was signing a check for the landscaper. But then, yesterday happened. Yesterday, Jasmine had called me demanding, not asking. Demanding that I co-sign a lease for a brand new Range Rover? She said her 2-year-old Honda was embarrassing to drive to the country club. I told her no. I told her a car is a depreciating asset and that she should be saving money, not spending it on status symbols. She had hung up on me, and now here we were. "The punishment, Jasmine," I said, my voice dropping to a low, serious tone. "Don't do this. Don't use my grandson as a weapon because you're mad I didn't buy you a toy. Let me see him. I can hear him inside." I could hear Leo's voice, muffled but unmistakable. "Is that Nana? Mommy, is Nana here?" My heart broke. "He knows I'm here, Jasmine. Let me in." "No," she said, stepping forward to close the screen door. "He needs to learn that we don't reward bad behavior. And frankly, neither do you. Maybe if you learn to respect our autonomy, we can talk about Christmas. But for now, you're banned. Banned." I stared at her. This woman would come into my son's life with nothing but a suitcase full of fast fashion clothes and a mountain of student debt that I paid off. This woman who I had treated like a daughter. "Where's Marcus? Does he know you're doing this?" "Marcus is right here," she said, glancing over her shoulder. My son stepped into the hallway behind her. He looked tired. He was wearing a t-shirt and sweatpants, his shoulders slumped. He wouldn't look me in the eye. He looked at the floor, at the wall, anywhere but at his mother. Kusai called out, "Are you going to let her do this? Are you going to let her keep me from seeing Leo on his birthday?" Marcus rubbed the back of his neck. "Mom, look. Jasmine is just really stressed right now. You know how she gets? Maybe just give it a few days. Let things cool down, I shouted, losing my composure. I am standing on your porch with a cake. I am his grandmother. You are going to let her ban me because I wouldn't buy her a Range Rover. It's not about the car. Jasmine shrieked, her composure cracking. It's about respect. It's about you thinking you can control us. Marcus, tell her to leave. Marcus looked at me, then at Jasmine. I saw the calculation in his eyes. He was afraid of her. He was afraid of the fight, the yelling, the withholding of affection that she used to control him. He was a weak man in that moment, and it hurt me more than Jasmine's cruelty ever could. Mom, please, he whispered. Just go. I'll call you later. You'll call me later. I asked, my voice trembling with rage and sorrow. When you need the mortgage paid? When the electric bill is due? Is that when you'll call? Goodbye, Vanessa, Jasmine said with a smirk. She slammed the door. The sound echoed through the neighborhood like a gunshot. I stood there for a long time, staring at the wood grain of the door I had paid to have refinished last summer. I could still hear Leo crying inside. Nana. I want Nana. I looked down at the cake in my hands. The frosting was starting to melt in the heat. I carefully placed it on the doormat. Happy birthday. Leo, I whispered to the closed door. I turned around and walked down the driveway. Past the manicured lawn I paid for, past the sprinkler system I installed. I got into my car, my hands shaking so hard I could barely put the key in the ignition. I didn't cry. I was past crying. I felt a cold, hard knot forming in the center of my chest. It was the realization that I had made a terrible mistake. I had thought that generosity would buy me love. I thought that if I gave them everything I never had, they would appreciate it. Instead, I had fed a beast that was now trying to eat me. I drove away from the house, but I didn't go home. I went to my bakery. I needed to work. I needed to knead dough and pound butter and create something that couldn't talk back, couldn't lie, couldn't betray me. As I drove, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Marcus. I'm sorry, Mom. She's just really hormonal. We'll fix this. Just ... Can you still deposit the money for the property tax? It's due on Friday, and we're a little short. I stared at the message. We're a little short. They were always a little short. I pulled over to the side of the road. I looked at the text again. I thought about Leo crying. I thought about Jasmine's smirk. I thought about Marcus looking at the floor. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my banking app. I went to the recurring transfers tab. Marcus and Jasmine House. Fund, $2,500 month. Marcus's phone plan, $180 month. Leo school. Tuition, $1,200 month. Emergency credit card. Auto pay. Full balance. I looked at the list. It was a list of my love, quantified in dollars and cents. It was the infrastructure of their lives. I took, deep breath, cancel transfer, close card. I deleted them all, every single one. If I was too toxic to see my grandson, then my money was certainly too toxic to pay their bills. I put the phone down and merged back into traffic. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the city. I felt lighter. Terrified, but lighter. They wanted independence. They wanted boundaries. Fine. I was about to give them the biggest boundary of their lives. But as I drove, a thought nagged at me. A small, dark thought that had been buried in the back of my mind for 5 years. Ever since Jasmine announced she was pregnant 3 months after meeting. Marcus.Leo doesn't look like Marcus. I had pushed it down. I had told myself I was being paranoid that babies change, that genetics are funny. I loved that boy with every fiber of my being, so it didn't matter. But now that she was using him as a hostage, now that she had slammed the door in my face, the thought grew louder. It grew teeth. And as I turned onto the street of my bakery, I realized that cutting off the money wasn't the end of this war. It was just the opening shot. Because if I was going to lose my grandson, I needed to know once and for all if he was really mine to lose. Asterisk, I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to this story of betrayal and truth from. I read every single one, and I want to know how far this story travels. Because what happened next? What happened when I decided to pull the thread of that 5-year-old secret? It didn't just unravel a lie. It tore our entire world apart. And trust me, you're going to want to hear how I found the scissors. The air in my bakery usually smells like vanilla and yeast, a scent that wraps around you like a warm hug the second you walk through the door. But that morning, standing behind the stainless steel counter with flour up to my elbows, all I could smell was the bitter temps of my own regret. I was kneading a batch of sourdough, pushing the heels of my hands into the dough with a force that was more about anger than baking technique. Every push was a memory. Every fold was a dollar sign. I closed my eyes and I could see the ledger of the last 5 years scrolling behind my eyelids like the credits of a movie. I wished I hadn't produced. It started with the wedding. Oh, that wedding. Jasmine had wanted a fairy tale, and Marcus, bless his heart, couldn't say no to her. He couldn't pay for it, but he couldn't say no. So who stepped in? I did. $40,000. I cashed out a CD I had been sitting on for a decade to pay for the venue. The catering, the flowers that died 3 hours after the ceremony, and that ridiculous ice sculpture of a swan that melted all over the buffet table. I remembered sitting in the front row, watching them exchange vows, tearing up because I was so happy for my son. I didn't know then that I wasn't just paying for a wedding. I was paying an entrance fee into their lives. Then came the house. They were tired of renting. They wanted to build equity. They wanted a yard for the baby. How could a mother say no to that? I put down $80,000 for the down payment on that 4-bedroom colonial in the suburbs. $80,000. That was my retirement. That was the money I was supposed to use to travel to Italy and learn how to make authentic pasta when I finally hung up my apron. Instead, it became a foyer I wasn't allowed to stand in, and a kitchen I wasn't allowed to cook in, and the emergencies. Lord, the emergencies. The time the AC broke in the middle of July, $2,000. The time Jasmine backed her car into a pole and didn't want to claim it on insurance because her premiums would go up, $1,500. The surprise medical bills. The organic groceries because Jasmine read an article about pesticides. It was a constant, steady drip, drip. Drip of my resources flowing out of my bank account and into their lifestyle. I stopped kneading. I looked down at my hands, dusted white with flour. These hands had worked every single day since I was 16 years old. I built this bakery from a stall at the farmer's market. I saved every penny, clipped every coupon, and denied myself luxuries so that my son wouldn't have to struggle the way I did. And what had I created? I had created a man who couldn't look me in the eye when his wife slammed the door in my face, and a woman who treated my generosity like a salary she was entitled to. The realization hit me so hard I had to lean against the counter. The birthday ban wasn't about boundaries. It wasn't about negative energy. It was a negotiation tactic. Jasmine was smart. I had to give her that. She knew exactly where my soft spot was. She knew that Leo was the center of my universe. When I refused to lease that Range Rover car that cost more a month than my first mortgage, she decided to impose a sanction. She was holding my grandson hostage until I paid the ransom. I wiped my hands on my apron. I walked over to the small office in the back of the bakery, the one with the filing cabinet that squeaked when you opened it. I sat down at my desk and pulled out my checkbook. I looked at the register. It was a roadmap of my own stupidity. I picked up the phone. I didn't call Marcus. I didn't call Jasmine. I called the bank. Vanessa King. I said to the automated voice, "Transfer services." When the representative came on the line, a nice young man named Kevin, I kept my voice steady. "I need to cancel some recurring transfers, Kevin." "Which ones, Ms. King?" "All of them," I said. There was a pause. "All of them. You have quite a few set up here. The mortgage supplement for Marcus King. Cancel it. The family phone plan autopay. Cancel it. The utility bill direct draft for the Willow Creek address. Cancel it. Take my card off the file. The insurance premium for the Honda? Cancel it." It took 20 minutes. 20 minutes to undo 5 years of enabling. With every confirmation number Kevin gave me, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. but it was replaced by a cold knot of anxiety in my stomach. I knew what this would do. I knew this was an act of war. By cutting off the money, I was effectively pulling the plug on their life support. They didn't have savings. They didn't have a budget. They lived paycheck to paycheck, and my contributions were the only thing keeping them afloat. When I hung up the phone, I sat there in the silence of the office. I felt sick. A mother's instinct is to protect, to provide. It goes against every fiber of your being to watch your child struggle. I imagined the lights going out. I imagined the repo man coming for the car. I imagined the grass growing long and the HOA sending letters. But then I remembered Jasmine's face. I remembered this smirk. I remembered the door slamming shut while Leo cried for me. If they wanted to be grown-ups, if they wanted to set boundaries and demand respect, then they could pay their own bills like grown-ups. You can't sit at the adult table and eat from the kids' menu. I went back to the front of the bakery. I turned the sign to open. I sold cupcakes and bagels and coffee to the morning rush. I smiled at my customers. I asked about their kids. I pretended that my heart wasn't breaking. I pretended that I wasn't waiting for the phone to ring. It didn't ring that day. Or the next. Or the next dot. It took 5 days. 5 days for the reality to hit. I was in the middle of frosting a tray of lemon bars when my cell phone buzzed on the counter. It was Marcus. I wiped a smudge of icing off my thumb and stared at the screen. I let it ring 3 times. I took a deep breath, steeling myself, and answered, "Hello, Marcus.Mom." His voice was high, panicked. It sounded like he was running. "Mom, something is wrong with the bank. Or the accounts." "I don't know. What's wrong?" I asked, keeping my voice calm, dusting a little powdered sugar over the bars. "The water, Mom." I was in the shower, I had shampoo in my hair, and the water just stopped. It just trickled out and died. I went out to the meter, and there's a tag on it. A red tag. They shut us off. "That sounds inconvenient," I said. "Inconvenient." "Mom, we have no water. I called the utility company, and they said the bill hasn't been paid in 3 months. "But you pay the water bill? You always pay the water bill." "It's on auto-draft. It was on auto-draft. I corrected him. I canceled it last week." Silence. Dead silence. I could hear him breathing short, shallow breaths. You canceled it. Why? Why would you do that without telling us?" "I didn't think I needed to tell you, Marcus. You and Jasmine were very clear on Leo's birthday. You said I was toxic. You said I brought negative energy into your home. You said you needed boundaries." "Yeah, but ... Well, I respected your boundaries," I said. "I figured if my presence was too toxic for your family, then my money must be too toxic for your bank account. I didn't want to infect you with my negative energy by paying for your water or your lights or your mortgage." "Mom, stop it." He snapped, and for a second he sounded just like Jasmine. "This isn't funny. We have a child here. Leo needs water. We need to flush the toilets. You can't just cut us off like this. It's dangerous." "You're a grown man, Marcus," I said, my voice hardening. "You are 30 years old. You have a job. You have a wife who wears silk robes. Surely between the two of you, you can figure out how to turn a faucet back on." "We don't have the money," he shouted. "It's $600 to get it reconnected. We spent our paychecks on other things." "On what?" I asked. "The lease for the Range Rover. Or was it the dinner at that steakhouse I saw posted on Jasmine's Instagram story last night?" "That's none of your business." "You're right," I said. "It isn't. It's just like my bank account is none of yours." "Mom, please," he begged, his voice cracking. "Just pay this one bill. Just the water. I'll pay you back. I swear." "Jasmine is freaking out. She can't wash her face. Tell Jasmine to use bottled water," I said. "Or maybe she can cry a river and wash her face in that, Mom. Listen to me, Marcus. I love you. I will always love you. But I am done being your ATM. I am done being the safety net you treat like a hammock. You stood there and watched your wife slam the door in my face on my grandson's birthday. You didn't say a word. You didn't defend me. You chose your side. Now you have to live there, but Leo, Leo is fine," I said, though my heart clenched at the mention of his name. You won't let him thirst. You'll figure it out. You'll sell the gaming console. You'll return the designer shoes. You'll do what men do when they have families to take care of. You'll sacrifice. I hung up the phone. My hand was shaking so bad I dropped the frosting spatula on the floor. I stood there, staring at the yellow plastic handle, fighting the urge to call him back, fighting the urge to fix it. It would be so easy. I could call the water company right now, pay the bill over the phone, and have it back on in an hour. It would stop the pain, but it wouldn't stop the disease. The entitlement was a sickness, and I had been feeding it for 5 years. If I fixed this, they would learn nothing. They would just learn that if they screamed loud enough, I would fold. I picked up the spatula and threw it in the sink. I went back to the lemon bars. I worked for the rest of the day in a daze, waiting for the next blow. I knew it wasn't over. The water was just the beginning. The mortgage was due on the 1st. The car insurance was due on the 15th. The walls were closing in on the house of cards they had built on my foundation. But as the adrenaline of the confrontation faded, that dark, nagging thought from the drive home crept back into my mind. It settled in the quiet corners of the bakery. Leo doesn't look like Marcus, now that the financial tie was severed. Now that the emotional blackmail was out in the open, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I thought about Marcus as a boy skinny, with knobby knees and ears that stuck out until he grew into them. He had deep chocolate skin, just like his father. Leo was lighter, much lighter. His hair texture was different. His nose was different. I had always chalked it up to Jasmine's side of the family. She was lighter skinned. But there was something else. Something in the eyes. Marcus had soft brown eyes. Leo's eyes were hazel. Flecks of green and gold. Where did the hazel eyes come from? I tried to push the thought away. It was crazy. It was paranoid. Jasmine was manipulative. Yes. She was greedy. Yes. But a lie that big? Passing off another man's child as my son's. That was a level of evil I didn't want to believe existed. But then I remembered the timeline. 5 years ago. Jasmine and Marcus had only been dating for 3 months when she announced she was pregnant. It was a whirlwind, a shotgun engagement. She had moved in 2 weeks later. Marcus had been so happy, so overwhelmed. He never questioned it. Why would he? He was in love, but I wasn't in love. I was just paying the bills. I wiped down the counter, the smell of lemon filling the air. I had cut off the money. That was step 1. But if I was going to save my son, really save him, I needed to know the truth. I needed to know what I was really paying for all these years. I didn't know it then. But the water getting shut off was the best thing that could have happened. Because desperation makes people sloppy. And Jasmine was about to get very, very desperate. And when people get desperate, they make mistakes. I just had to be ready to catch them. The silence from Willow Creek lasted 3 days after the water incident. I expected Marcus to call back, maybe to beg, maybe to threaten, or maybe, God willing, to apologize. But the phone stayed quiet. It was a heavy silence, the kind that presses down on your chest when you're trying to sleep at night. I kept busy at the bakery, throwing myself into the holiday rush orders. But every time the door chime rang, my head snapped up, hoping to see my son. It was never him. On Thursday, I needed to restock my home pantry. I had been eating bakery leftovers for a week, and a woman cannot live on lemon bars alone. I drove to the big grocery store on the other side of town, the one with the good produce section where they miss the vegetables every 10 minutes. I liked the anonymity of it. I liked pushing my cart through the aisles, looking at the prices of eggs and milk. Pretending that my only worry was what to cook for dinner, I was in the cereal aisle, debating between the healthy bran flakes I needed and the sugary loops I wanted, when I heard a voice that sounded like nails on a chalkboard. "Ms. Vanessa, is that you?" I froze. I knew that voice. I turned around, putting on my best customer service smile. Standing there, holding a box of organic granola, was Keisha. Keisha was Jasmine's best friend from high school, or at least she used to be. They had a falling out a few years ago, something about a bridesmaid dress and a bachelorette party bill that Jasmine refused to pay. Keisha was messy. She was the kind of girl who knew everybody's business and broadcast it like the nightly news. "Hello, Keisha," I said, adjusting my purse on my shoulder. "How are you doing, baby?" "I'm good, Miss Vanessa. You look great. That bakery must be keeping you young." She leaned in, her eyes sparkling with that dangerous mix of curiosity and gossip. "I heard about the drama. People are talking." Course they were. Jasmine probably posted a cryptic status update about toxic in-laws before the water even stopped dripping from the tap. "Family business, Keisha," I said, turning back to the cereal. "We're working through it. Right? Right?" she said, nodding too eagerly. I mean, I'm not surprised. Jasmine always was. High maintenance. Remember back in the day? We used to call her Princess Jasmine before she even met Marcus. She always said she was going to marry rich. I felt a prickle on the back of my neck. "Well, she married Marcus," I said dryly. "I don't know if rich is the word I'd use, but I've certainly done my best to make them comfortable." "Oh, girl, you did more than comfortable." Keisha laughed. "You set them up. I remember when she met him. It was at that club downtown, right? The Onyx Room. She called me that night screaming. She said I found him, Keisha. I found the one." I was shocked because, she was still kind of dealing with the whole Trey situation. I paused. My hand hovered over the bran flakes tray. I asked. I kept my voice casual, like I was asking about the weather. "I don't think I recall a tray." Keisha's eyes went wide, realizing she might have spilled a little too much tea. "Oh, ... Trey. Her ex. The one she dated for like 3 years on and off. The basketball player. Light skin, hazel eyes, kind of a bad boy." Hazel eyes, the box of cereal in my hand suddenly felt very heavy. "Oh, right, I lied. That Trey, I didn't realize. The timeline was so close. Girl, close." Keisha snorted, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "It was overlapping. Trey was back in town that same month. They had a huge blow-up fight. She went to the club to blow off steam, met Marcus. And boom, 2 weeks later, she's moving in with your son. I always thought she moved on so fast just to make Trey jealous. But hey, it worked out for her, right? She got the house, she got the ring, she got the baby." "She got the baby." "Yes," I said, my throat tight. "She got Leo. Leo is so cute," Keisha cooed, scrolling through her phone. "I saw a picture of him on Facebook the other day. He is getting so big. And those eyes. Lord, he looks just like..." She stopped. She looked at me. Then she looked down at her phone. The silence in the cereal aisle was deafening. "Just like who, Keisha?" I asked. "Just like..." "His daddy," she stammered, her face flushing pink. "He looks just like Marcus. Strong genes? Anyway, I gotta run. My ice cream is melting." She practically ran away from me, her cart rattling down the aisle. I stood there for a long time. The music in the store was playing some upbeat pop song. But all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. Trey, light skin. Hazel eyes overlapping. I left my cart right there in the aisle. I walked out of the store without buying a single thing. I got in my car and drove home. My hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. When I got home, I didn't turn on the lights. I walked straight to the living room and opened the bottom drawer of the hutch where I kept the photo albums. I pulled out 2 of them. One was a blue album labeled Marcus, the early years. The other was a digital Prince book I had made for Leo's first 3 years. I sat on the floor, spreading the albums out on the coffee table. I turned on the lamp. I opened Marcus's album to page 5. Marcus at age 5. He was a beautiful boy. Deep, rich chocolate skin, just like his father and me. A broad, flat nose. Dark, almost black eyes that looked like pools of coffee. His hair was thick and coily, tight curls that refused to lay down. Asterisk, asterisk, then I opened Leo's book. Leo at age 5. I put the photos side by side. I had always told myself that Leo took after Jasmine. Jasmine was lighter than Marcus, yes. She had softer features. But looking at them now, really looking at them with the filter of grandma's love stripped away by the betrayal of the last week. The differences were screaming at me. Leo's skin wasn't just lighter. It had a different undertone. Golden, not cool. His nose was narrow with a little bridge that Marcus didn't have. His hair was looser, wavier, and the eyes. Marcus had dark brown eyes. Jasmine had dark brown eyes. Leo had hazel eyes. Green and gold flecks that caught the light. I had learned in biology class 50 years ago that too. Brown-eyed parents can have a hazel-eyed child, but it's rare. It's recessive. It's a genetic lottery win. But what wasn't rare? A hazel-eyed father having a hazel-eyed son. Trey, light skin. Hazel eyes. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to put my head between my knees. I wasn't just looking at photos. I was looking at a crime scene. I started doing the math. The timeline. I needed to be sure. I got a notepad from my purse. Jasmine and Marcus met in March 5 years ago. It was St. Patrick's Day weekend. I remembered because Marcus had come home with a green bead necklace and a goofy smile, saying he met an angel. They announced the pregnancy in June, just 3 months later. "We're so excited, Mom," Marcus had said, beaming. "It happened fast, but we're in love." Jasmine had stood there, rubbing a belly that was completely flat, smiling that shy, demure smile. "I'm about 8 weeks along." She had said, 8 weeks in June means conception in April. That fit the timeline. That meant the baby was Marcus's. But then came the birth. Leo was born in late October. October 24th. I did the math on my fingers. April to October is 6 months. 26 weeks, Leo was supposed to be a preemie. A severe preemie. I closed my eyes, remembering the day he was born. We got the call in the middle of the night. "The baby is coming." Marcus had screamed. We rushed to the hospital. When we got there, Jasmine was already in recovery. The baby was in the nursery. "Came early," Jasmine had told us, looking exhausted but oddly composed. "The doctors say he's a fighter." I went to the nursery. I expected to see a tiny, fragile thing hooked up to tubes. I expected an incubator. Instead, I saw a baby in a regular bassinet. He was swaddled tight. He had a full head of hair. His cheeks were chubby. How much did he weigh? I had asked the nurse. 8 pounds, 2 ounces, she had said with a smile. A big, healthy boy. At the time, I was just so relieved he was healthy. I was so happy he was alive. I didn't think about it. I didn't question it. I just thanked God. But now? Sitting on my living room floor with the ghosts of the past surrounding me. 8 pounds, 2 ounces, a baby born at 26 weeks weighs 2 pounds. Maybe 3. A baby born at 26 weeks does not have chubby cheeks. A baby born at 26 weeks lives in the NICU for months. Leo came home 2 days later. 8 pounds. 2 ounces is a full-term baby. A 40-week baby. If Leo was full-term in October, that meant he wasn't conceived in April. He was. Conceived in January. 2. Months before Jasmine met Marcus. 2 months before. St. Patrick's Day. When she was still with Trey, the realization hit me like a physical blow to the chest. I gasped, the air leaving my lungs. It wasn't a suspicion anymore. It was math. It was biology. It was a fact staring me in the face. Jasmine hadn't just trapped my son with a baby. She had trapped him with someone else's baby. She had known. She had to know. You don't mistake a January conception for an April one. You don't accidentally carry a baby for 10 months. She knew she was pregnant when she met Marcus. Or she found out right after. And she saw him sweet, naive, employed Marcus with a mother who owned a business and she saw a meal ticket. She saw a way out of her drama with Trey. She had looked my son in the eye and lied to him every single day for 5 years. She had let him sign the birth certificate. She had let him cut the cord. She had let him fall in love with a child that wasn't his. And she had let me pay for it. The house, the car, the private school, the organic food. It was all for Trey's son. I stood up, pacing the room. My hands were shaking so bad I had to clasp them together. I felt like I was going to vomit. The betrayal was so deep, so absolute, it made the money issues seem like a joke. This wasn't about a water bill. This was about blood. This was about lineage. I looked at the photo of Leo again. His sweet, innocent face. His hazel eyes laughing at the camera. I loved him. God help me. I loved that boy. He was innocent in this. He didn't ask to be part of a con. He didn't ask to be a pawn. But Marcus. Marcus was living a lie. He was raising another man's child, pouring his heart and soul and wallet into a legacy that wasn't his. And if I told him, if I went to him right now and said, "Son, I think your wife is a fraud and your son is a stranger," what would happen? He wouldn't believe me. He would hate me. Jasmine would spin it. She would say I was crazy, jealous, evil. She would say I was trying to destroy their family because I was bitter about the money. She would ban me forever, and this time Marcus would help her lock the door. I couldn't just accuse her. I needed proof. Irrefutable, scientific. Court had admissible proof. I needed DNA. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. Forcing myself to drink it, I needed a plan. I couldn't get a DNA test without Leo, and I was banned from seeing Leo. I looked at the calendar on the wall. It was the 28th of the month. The mortgage was due on the 1st. Jasmine and Marcus were broke. The water was off. They had no savings. They were used to me swooping in at the 11th hour. They were desperate. And desperation makes people make deals with the devil. Well, the devil was about to make a phone call. I picked up my cell phone. I stared at Jasmine's contact info. I hadn't blocked her, even though she blocked me on social media. I didn't call her. I waited. I knew the cycle. They would try to borrow money from friends. They would try to get a payday loan. But eventually, when the reality of eviction loomed, when the lights flickered, they would come back to the well. And when they did, I wouldn't offer water. I would offer a trade. I needed access to that boy. Just for 5 minutes. Just long enough to get a cheek swab or a hair follicle or a used juice box. I went to my computer. I opened a browser window. I typed in private paternity DNA test kit, rush delivery. I ordered it. Expedited shipping. It would be here in 2 days. I sat back in my chair watching the order confirmation screen. I felt cold. I felt calculated. The warm cookie-baking grandmother was gone. In her place was a woman who was about to blow up her own family to save it. "You want negative energy, Jasmine?" I whispered to the empty room. "I'll give you negative energy. I'm going to bring the truth down on your head like a ton of bricks." The doubt wasn't a shadow anymore. It was a spotlight. And I was getting ready to point it right at her 5-year lie. The package arrived on a Tuesday, wrapped in discreet gray plastic that looked like just another Amazon delivery of vitamins or socks. But when I held it in my hand, it felt heavy. Not physically heavy, it weighed less than a pound, but spiritually heavy. It felt like I was holding a grenade with the pin already pulled. I took it into my bedroom and locked the door, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I opened it carefully, laying the contents out on my bedspread. 2 sterile swabs in plastic tubes. A return envelope. Instructions that looked simple enough on paper but felt impossible in practice. Rub the swab firmly against the inside of the cheek for 30 to 60 seconds. 30 seconds. Do you know how long 30 seconds is when you're trying to steal the truth from a 5-year-old? While his mother watches you like a hawk, it's an eternity. I put the kit in my purse, tucked into a zippered side pocket where I usually kept my lipstick. And then I sat by the phone and waited. I knew the call was coming. It was the 1st of the month. The mortgage on the Willow Creek house was due. The water had been off for a week. The lights were probably next. I knew Jasmine. She could go without water for a few days. She'd just shower at the gym, but she couldn't go without a roof over her head. She couldn't handle the shame of an eviction notice taped to the door where the neighbors could see. It happened at 10 a.m. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. The name on the screen wasn't Marcus. It was Jasmine. I let it ring twice. I took a sip of my coffee, steeling myself. I had to play a role now. I couldn't be the angry mother who cut them off. I had to be the broken, desperate grandmother who would do anything to see her baby. I had to be the mark. I answered. Hello? Vanessa, Jasmine said. Her voice wasn't screechy this time. It was tight, controlled, layered with a fake sweetness that made my teeth ache. Hi, how are you? I'm fine, Jasmine, I said, keeping my voice low and tired. Just working. Right? Look, Marcus and I have been talking. We've been doing a lot of thinking about boundaries and family. And we think maybe we were too harsh. Leo misses you. He's been asking for his Nana every day. It's breaking my heart. It was a lie. I knew it was a lie. She didn't care about Leo's heart. She cared about her credit score. But I played along. He misses me. I asked, letting a wobble enter my voice. I miss him too, Jasmine. I miss him so much I can't sleep. I know, she cooed. And we want you to see him. We really do. But things are just so stressful right now. With the house and the bills. It's hard to focus on family time when we're worried about losing our home. Marcus is so depressed. It's affecting Leo. Here it was. The pivot is there. Is there anything I can do? I asked, hating the words as they left my mouth. Well, Jasmine said, pausing for effect. The mortgage is past due. And there's a late fee. It's $4,000 to get us current. If you could help us with that just this once, I think it would really lower the temperature over here. We could start fresh. You could come see Leo today. I asked, I can see him today. Sure, she said. Meet us at Centennial Park, by the playground. At noon. Bring the check and you can spend an hour with him. We can call it a peace offering, okay? I said. I'll be there. Noon. I hung up the phone. I didn't celebrate. I didn't smile. I felt like I was preparing for a heist. I went to my desk and wrote a check for $4,000. But I dated it for Friday 2 days from now. I needed time for the lab to process the results. If the test came back proving Leo was Marcus's son, I would honor the check. I would apologize for my paranoia, pay the bills, and try to repair the damage. But if the test came back the way my gut told me it would, well, Friday would never come. I arrived at the park at 11:45. I sat on a bench near the swings, my purse clutched in my lap. The park was full of mothers and nannies pushing strollers, kids screaming with joy, the smell of cut grass and mulch in the air. It was a beautiful day for a betrayal. At noon sharp, I saw them walking from the parking lot. Jasmine was wearing oversized sunglasses and a tracksuit that looked brand new. She probably bought it before the credit card got declined. She was walking fast, looking at her phone. Trailing behind her, kicking at the dirt, was Leo. My heart squeezed. He looked smaller. His clothes were rumpled. He didn't have that spark in his step. He looked like a little boy who knew things weren't right at home. Nana. He shouted when he saw me. He broke into a run. Jasmine didn't try to stop him this time. She just stopped walking and crossed her arms, watching him run to me. He slammed into my legs, burying his face in my stomach. I wrapped my arms around him, smelling his hair baby shampoo and sweat. I held him tight, tears pricking my eyes. This boy, this sweet, innocent boy, I loved him. I loved him so much it hurt. And in that moment, I almost called it off. I almost thought, does it matter? Does it matter whose blood he has? He's mine. But then I looked up and saw Jasmine. She was tapping her foot, her hand held out expectantly, like a toll booth operator waiting for payment. She didn't care about the hug. She didn't care about the love. She was selling access to this child, renting him out by the hour. And that I couldn't forgive. Hi, baby, I whispered to Leo, kissing the top of his head. I missed you so much. I missed you too, Nana, he said, looking up at me with those hazel eyes. Those Trey eyes. Mommy said you were in timeout. Looked at Jasmine. She smirked. Something like that, I said to him. But I'm out now. And look what I brought. I reached into my purse. My hand brushed against the plastic tube of the DNA kit, but I grabbed the other item I had packed. A giant swirl-colored lollipop. the kind you get at the fair. It was pure sugar, sticky and messy. Wow. Leo's eyes went wide. Can he have it? I asked Jasmine, playing the role of the respectful grandmother. Jasmine rolled her eyes. Fine, whatever, just don't get it on his shirt. Did you bring the other thing? I did, I said, patting my purse. But I want to play with him first. Just for a bit, please. Do you have an hour? She said, checking her nails. I'm going to sit over there. She pointed to a bench about 20 feet away, just out of earshot but close enough to watch. I sat down on the bench with Leo. He unwrapped the lollipop and stuck it in his mouth, happily sucking away. I watched him, my heart racing. I needed a sample. A good one. The instructions said a cheek swab was best. But how do you stick a Q-tip in a 5-year-old's mouth without him asking questions? Without him telling his mother? I had a plan B. Is it good? I asked him. Tastes like cherry, he said, pulling it out of his mouth. It was covered in saliva. Yum, I said. I looked over at Jasmine. She was deep in her phone, probably scrolling TikTok or looking for a new divorce lawyer just in case. She wasn't looking at us. Leo, I said softly. You have a little something on your cheek. Let Nana get it. I reached into my purse. I didn't pull out a tissue. I pulled out the sterile swab. I kept it hidden in my palm, the tip just barely peeking out between my fingers. Come here, I said. He leaned in, trusting me completely. Open up a little, I said, pretending to wipe the corner of his mouth with my thumb while I slipped the swab inside his cheek. Nana, that tickles. He giggled, pulling back. I froze. Had I gotten enough? The instructions said 30 seconds. I had maybe 2. It wasn't enough. I looked at Jasmine. She hadn't moved. Sorry, baby, I said. I just want to make sure you look handsome. I needed more. I looked at the lollipop. He was going to town on it. Leo, I said. Let me see your tongue. Is it blue yet? He stuck his tongue out. Ah, I did it again. I pretended to wipe his lip, but I ran the swab firmly along the inside of his cheek, counting in my head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, ... double quotes, Nana. He pulled away again, looking at me funny. What are you doing? Just cleaning you up, I said, my heart pounding so hard I thought he could hear it. I quickly slid the swab back into its plastic tube and capped it, hiding the motion behind my purse. It was risky. It might not be enough DNA. I needed insurance. Hey, I said, that lollipop is getting really sticky. Do you want some water? Yes, please, he said. I handed him a water bottle I had brought. He took a long drink. Hold on, I said. Let me hold the lollipop for a second. He handed me the sticky Hefeton candy. The stick was wet. While he drank. I quickly took a second swab from my purse, had brought a backup, and rubbed it vigorously all over the wet stick of the lollipop and the part of the candy he had been sucking on. It wasn't a cheek swab, but it was saliva. DNA is DNA. I shoved the second swab into its tube and dropped both of them into the Ziploc bag in the hidden pocket of my purse. Here you go, I said, handing the candy back. My hands were shaking. I felt dirty. I felt like a spy in a bad movie. I was stealing genetic material from my own grandson in a public park. But I looked at his face that didn't look like my son's. That face that looked like a man named Treyand. I knew I had to do it. We played for another 40 minutes. I pushed him on the swings. We went down the slide. I tried to memorize his laugh just in case this was the last time. Just in case the truth destroyed everything. Time's up, Jasmine called out from the bench. She stood up, not even bothering to walk over to us. She just beckoned with her hand like she was calling a dog. I have to go, Nana, Leo said, his face falling. I know, baby, I said. I hugged him one last time. I love you. You remember that, okay? No matter what happens, Nana loves you. I love you too, he said. He ran over to his mother. Jasmine grabbed his hand and walked toward me. Well, she said, holding out her other hand. The check. I reached into my purse. I pulled out the check for $4,000. Here, I said. She grabbed it, her eyes lighting up with greedy triumph. She looked at the amount. She smiled. "See?" she said. "That wasn't so hard, was it? We just needed a little help." Then she looked closer. "Wait," she said, frowning. "This is dated for Friday. Today is Wednesday." "I know," I said, keeping my face perfectly still. "I have a transfer coming into my account on Friday morning. If you cash it before then, it will bounce. You have to wait 48 hours. 48 hours. She snapped. "Vanessa, we have late fees accumulating. And I have cash flow issues." I lied smoothly. "Take it or leave it, Jasmine. It's good on Friday. Just hold it for 2 days." She glared at me. She wanted to scream. She wanted the money now. But she looked at the check for $1,000 and she knew she had no other option. "It's fine," she spat, shoving the check into her pocket. "Friday. But if this bounces, Vanessa, don't expect to see Leo for Christmas, or Easter, or ever." "It won't bounce," I said. "As long as everything checks out?" "What does that mean?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. "It means as long as the bank clears the transfer," I said, turning away so she couldn't see the look in my eyes. "Goodbye, Jasmine. Give Leo a kiss for me." I walked away. I walked back to my car, my purse heavy with the plastic tubes that held the future of my family. I got in the car and locked the doors. I pulled the Ziploc bag out. I stared at the swabs. I had 48 hours. Asterisk, asterisk, I drove straight to the post office. I paid $60 for overnight priority shipping to the lab. "Do you want insurance on that?" the clerk asked me. I said, "The contents are priceless." I walked out of the post office and looked up at the sky. It was blue and clear, but I felt a storm coming. A storm I had created. I went home and waited. Thursday passed in a blur of anxiety. I checked the tracking number every hour, delivered processing dot on Friday morning. The day the check became valid, I sat at my computer, refreshing my email. The lab said results typically took 3 to 5 days, but I had paid for the rush minus 24-hour service at 9 a.m. Jasmine texted me, heading to the bank to deposit the check. "Thanks." I didn't reply at 10:30 a.m. My inbox pinged subject. DNA test results, case number 99,821. Order complete. My heart stopped. The room went silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the blood rushing in my ears. I hovered the mouse over the email. If I opened it, there was no going back. If I opened it, I might lose my son. I might lose my grandson. I might be wrong and I would be the evil mother-in-law who doubted her own blood. Or I might be right, and I would be the woman who blew up a 5-year lie. I clicked. The PDF opened. I scrolled past the scientific jargon, the loci comparison charts, the legal disclaimers. I looked for the bottom line. The probability of paternity, sample a child versus sample B. Alleged grandmother lineage. Wait. I had sent my DNA to compare grandmaternal linkage. If Marcus was the father, I would share 25% of my DNA with Leo. I looked at the number of probability of grandmaternal relationship, 0.0%. Conclusion. The donor of sample A is not biologically related to the donor of sample B. I stared at the 0.0. He wasn't Marcus's son. He wasn't my grandson. The baby I had held in the hospital. The boy I had taught to bake cookies. The child I had bought a house for. He was a stranger. And Jasmine. Jasmine had looked me in the eye for 5 years and lied. She had taken my money, taken my love, and laughed all the way to the bank. I felt a scream building in my chest, a primal, wounded sound. But I swallowed it. I looked at the clock. 10:35 a.m. Jasmine was at the bank. She was depositing the check. I picked up my phone. I called the bank. "Vanessa King," I said, my voice cold as death. "Stop payment on check number 402. "Yes, the one for $4,000. I want it stopped immediately. Reason for stop payment." The banker asked. "Fraud?" I said. "Pure, unadulterated fraud." I hung up. The check would bounce. Jasmine would be standing at the teller window looking like a fool. But that wasn't enough. I needed them to know. I needed Marcus to see the paper. I needed to see Jasmine's face when the mask fell off. I sent a text to the group chat me. Marcus and Jasmine, come over for dinner tonight. 7 p.m. I have the deed to the house ready to sign over. I want to make things right. It was the bait. The ultimate bait. They wanted the house. They wanted security. I would dangle it in front of them, and then I would drop the guillotine. The text message I sent, come over for dinner tonight. 7 p.m. I have the deed to the house ready to sign over sat on my screen like a digital landmine. I stared at it, watching the little delivered status turn into read almost instantly. I knew exactly what was happening on the other end of that phone. I could practically see Jasmine's eyes widening, the dollar signs flashing in her pupils like a slot machine hitting the jackpot. I could see her grabbing Marcus's arm, digging her claws in, whispering that they had won. That the old lady had finally cracked. They thought I was surrendering. They thought the freeze-out had worked. That I was so desperate to be in their lives, so desperate to be Nana, that I was willing to hand over a $500,000 asset just to get back in their good graces. They didn't know that I wasn't surrendering. I was inviting them to their own execution. My phone rang less than 30 seconds later. It was Marcus. I let it ring twice. I needed to compose my face, my voice, my soul. I needed to sound like the defeated mother, not the executioner. I cleared my throat, took a sip of water, and answered, "Hello." "Mom?" Marcus sounded breathless, almost giddy. "We got your text." Are you serious?" "The deed." "I'm serious, Marcus," I said, keeping my voice low and weary. "I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of the distance. You're my son. Leo is family. I want you to have security. I want you to have the house." "Oh my God, Mom." He breathed out, the relief palpable in his voice. "Thank you. Thank you so much. I knew we could work this out. Jasmine is crying. She's so happy. Crying." Sure she was. Crying tears of pure greed. "I'm glad," I said. "But there is one thing. The check I gave Jasmine. The one for the mortgage? Yeah, it's going to bounce." I lied smoothly. I had to move all my liquid assets into a single holding account to prepare for the deed transfer and the trust setup. The bank froze the smaller accounts for 24 hours. "Tell her not to worry. When you sign the papers tonight, I'll write a cashier's check for the arrears. It'll all be handled." It was a flimsy lie, financial gibberish really, but I knew they wouldn't question it. Greed has a way of making people stupid. They were so focused on the big prize to house that they wouldn't care about a $4,000 check bouncing. They would see it as a clerical error on the way to a windfall. "Okay," Marcus said, not even pausing to think about it. "Okay, I'll tell her. We'll be there at 7. Should we bring anything?" "Just bring Leo," I said, my voice catching slightly. "And bring your appetite. I'm making pork chops." "Your smothered chops." He sounded like a little boy again. "I haven't had those in years." "I know," I said. "I figured we needed a proper family meal. See you at 7, Mom. Love you." "See you," I said. I hung up and placed the phone face down on the counter. The silence of the house rushed back in, heavy and suffocating. I had 6 hours. 6 hours to prepare the stage for the end of the world. I started in the kitchen. I needed to cook. Not because they deserved a meal, but because I needed to do something with my hands. If I stopped moving, I would start screaming. I pulled out my heavy cast iron skillet, the one my grandmother had given me, the one that had cooked 1,000 meals for Marcus when he was growing up. I seasoned the flour. I chopped the onions and the bell peppers. The rhythmic chop-chop of the knife against the wooden board was soothing. It was the only thing making sense in a world that had turned upside down. As I browned the meat, fell the meat. The smell of frying pork and onions filled the kitchen, savory, rich, familiar. It smelled like Sunday dinners. It smelled like safety. It was a cruel trick I was playing, using the scent of home to lure them into a trap. But I had to do it. I needed Marcus to be relaxed. I needed his guard down. I needed him to feel safe, so that when the truth hit him, there would be no walls up to deflect it. While the chops simmered in the gravy, I went to my home office. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out a fresh manila envelope. I didn't have a deed transfer document. I didn't have a trust fund contract. I had a printer. I walked over to my computer and opened the PDF of the DNA. Results: probability of paternity, 0.0%. Probability of grandmatter null. Relationship, 0.0%. I hit print. The machine whirred to life, spitting out 3 pages of white paper that weighed more than the house itself. I took them, stapled them neatly in the corner, and slid them into the manila envelope. I didn't seal it. I wanted it to slide out easily. I placed the envelope in the center of the dining room table. I set the table with the good china, the plates with the gold rim that I only used for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I polished the silverware. I folded the napkins into crisp triangles. It looked like a celebration. It looked like a peace treaty signing. At 6:30 p.m., I went upstairs to change. I took off my flour-dusted apron and my comfortable leggings. I put on a dress, a navy blue wrap dress that made me feel authoritative, powerful. I put on my pearls. I put on lipstick. I looked in the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked tired. Her eyes were rimmed with red, and there was a new line etched between her brows that hadn't been there a week ago. But she also looked fierce. She looked like a woman who had walked through fire and come out the other side made of steel. "You can do this, Vanessa," I whispered to my reflection. "You have to do this." For Marcus. Went back downstairs. I checked the gravy. It was thick and dark. Perfect. I turned the burner to low. At 6:55 p.m. Headlights swept across the front window. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I walked to the window and peeked through the blinds. It was them. They were parking the Honda, the embarrassing car, in my driveway. I watched them get out. Jasmine was first. She was wearing a white sundress that looked innocent and sweet, her hair blown out perfectly. She was smiling. She looked around my property with a possessive gaze, like she was already measuring the yard for a pool. She said something to Marcus, and he laughed a loose, relieved laugh I hadn't heard in years. Then he opened the back door and lifted Leo out. *** Leo. My breath hitched. He was wearing a little polo shirt and khaki shorts, looking like a miniature gentleman. He was holding a toy truck. He wasn't my grandson. The science said he wasn't. The math said he wasn't. But my heart didn't care about math. My heart saw the boy I had rocked to sleep. My heart saw the boy whose scraped knees I had bandaged. I realized then that this was going to hurt me just as much as it hurt them. Maybe more. Because when I dropped this bomb, I wasn't just losing a daughter-in-law. I was losing a grandson. I was losing the future I thought I had. But I couldn't let the lie stand. A foundation built on a lie will always crumble. It was better to tear it down now, controllably, than to let it collapse on top of Marcus 10 years from now. The doorbell rang. I took a deep breath. I smoothed my dress. I walked to the door. I opened it. "Hi, Mom," Marcus said, beaming. He had a bottle of wine in his hand. "We brought a little something to celebrate." "Vanessa," Jasmine said, stepping forward to give me a hug. It was a stiff, performative hug, her body barely touching mine, but she was smiling. "It smells amazing in here." "Is that the pork chops? Marcus has been talking about them all day." "Come in," I said, stepping back. "Come inside." "Tay." They walked into the foyer. The energy was manic, buzzing with false cheer. "Nana," Leo shouted, running past his parents. "Hey, buddy," I said, crouching down to catch him. I hugged him tight, breathing in his scent one last time. "You look so handsome. Can I go watch TV?" he asked, wiggling out of my arms. "I want to watch cartoons." "Sure," I said, standing up. "Go into the living room." I put the remote on the coffee table. I watched him run off. Good. He would be in the other room. He wouldn't see the explosion. "So," Jasmine said, walking into the dining room and running her hand along the back of a chair, "you really went all out with the table setting. Fancy? It's a special occasion," I said. "Sit down. I'll get the food." I went into the kitchen and plated the meal. huge, tender pork chops smothered in onion gravy, mashed potatoes, green beans with bacon. I carried the heavy platter into the dining room and set it down. Marcus and Jasmine were already seated. They were sitting next to each other, holding hands on top of the table. They looked like the perfect couple. Young, hopeful, about to inherit a house. I sat down at the head of the table. The manila envelope was right in front of me. "This looks incredible, Mom," Marcus said, reaching for the serving spoon. "Wait," Jasmine said, putting a hand on his arm. She looked at me, her eyes glittering. "Before we eat, Vanessa, you mentioned the paperwork. We have a sitter coming at 9, so we just wanted to make sure we got everything ... sorted." She couldn't even wait to eat. She was starving, but not for pork chops. "Yes," I said. "The paperwork." I picked up the envelope. "I know things have been hard lately," I started, my voice steady. "I know we've said things we can't take back, but I wanted to end the fighting. I wanted to put everything on the table. The truth. The whole truth." "We appreciate that, Vanessa," Jasmine said, nodding sagely. "We really do. We just want security for Leo. That's all this is about. His future. His future," I repeated. "Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking about." I looked at Marcus. He was smiling at me, that trusting, open smile that broke my heart. He had no idea. He was a lamb sitting at the slaughter, thinking he was a guest of honor. "Marcus," I said, "do you remember when you told me Jasmine was pregnant? That day in June." "Yeah," he laughed. I was terrified, but happy. "You said it happened fast," I said. "You had only known her for 3 months." Jasmine stiffened. Her smile faltered just a fraction. "Vanessa, why are we bringing up ancient history? Let's focus on the now. The house. The house is part of the history," I said, not taking my eyes off her. "Because I bought that house for my son and his family. I paid the down payment for my blood." "Okay," Marcus said slowly, sensing the shift in the air. "Mom, what's going on?" "You're acting weird." "Not acting weird, Marcus. I'm acting like a mother." I tapped the envelope against the table. "Jasmine," I said, "before I sign this house over, is there anything you want to tell Marcus? Anything about, say, January of 5 years ago? Anything about a man named Trey?" The room went dead silent. The air conditioning hummed. From the living room, I could hear the faint sound of SpongeBob SquarePants laughing. Jasmine's face went white. Not pale white, like the blood had been drained out of her with a syringe. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her eyes darted from me to Marcus to the envelope. "Who is Trey?" Marcus asked, looking confused. "Jasmine! What is she talking about?" "She's crazy," Jasmine whispered, her voice trembling. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the wood floor. "She's trying to start drama. Marcus, let's go. She's not going to sign the deed. She just brought us here to humiliate me." "Sit down, Jasmine," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it was heavy. It commanded the room. "No, I'm not listening to this. Come on, Marcus." She grabbed his arm, trying to pull him up, but Marcus didn't move. He was looking at me. He saw the look on my face, the look I had when I caught him skipping school, the look I had when I fired a dishonest employee. He knew that look. It was the look of truth. "Mom," he said, his voice tight, "what is in the envelope?" "Jasmine says I'm toxic," I said. "She says I bring negative energy. She says I don't respect boundaries. So I decided to check. I decided to see if I really was the problem, or if the problem was a lie that started 5 years ago." I slid the envelope across the polished wood table. It stopped right in front of Marcus's plate. "I didn't write a check for the mortgage, Marcus," I said softly. "I wrote a check for a rush order DNA test." Jasmine lunged for the envelope. "Don't touch it," she screamed. But Marcus was faster. He slapped his hand down on the envelope, pinning it to the table. He looked up at his wife. He saw the terror in her eyes. He saw the guilt, and in that moment, the boy I raised finally grew up. He picked up the envelope. He tore the flap open. "Marcus, Don't! Jasmine begged, tears streaming down her face now. It's a lie. She faked it. She hates me. Marcus pulled out the paper. He unfolded it. He read the first line. Then the second I watched him, I watched his world end. I watched the color drain from his face, watched his lips tremble. Watched the light in his eyes go out. He looked up at me, then at Jasmine. He held up the paper. 0%. He whispered. The sound was more painful than a scream. 0. Marcus, baby, listen to me, Jasmine started, reaching for him. Don't touch me. He roared, standing up so fast his chair flew backward and hit the wall with a crash. Leo stopped laughing in the other room. Mommy, he called out. We all froze. Marcus looked at the living room doorway. Then he looked at Jasmine. He looked at her stomach where he had rested his head when she was pregnant. He looked at her hands, which he had held during labor. Who is he? Marcus asked. His voice was dead. Doesn't matter. Jasmine cried. You're his father. You raised him. Blood doesn't matter. Blood doesn't matter. Marcus laughed, a hysterical, broken sound. You let me sign the birth certificate. You let me name him. You let my mother pay for his school, his clothes, his food, for 5 years. You looked me in the face every single day and you lied. I did it for us. She screamed. Trey left me. I was alone. And then I met you, and you were so good and so kind, and you had money. I just wanted a family, Marcus. Is that a crime? Yes, I said, speaking for the first time since the envelope slide. It is. It's called paternity fraud, and it's unforgivable. Marcus looked at me. He looked at the paperwork in his hand. He crumpled it into a ball. Get out, he said to Jasmine. Marcus, get out, he screamed, the veins in his neck bulging. Get out of this house. Get out of my life. Take your son and get out. Take your son. Those 3 words hung in the air, heavy and final. He had disowned the boy. In 1 second, the bond was severed. Jasmine looked at him. She saw the rage. She saw the end of the gravy train. She saw the Range Rover and the country club membership evaporating into smoke. She didn't apologize. She didn't beg for forgiveness. Her face hardened into that mask of disdain I had seen on the porch. Fine, she spat. I never loved you anyway. You were just a paycheck. And a boring one at that. She turned and marched into the living room. Leo, let's go. But my show isn't over. Leo, wind. We're leaving now. Asterisk, asterisk. She dragged him out of the room. Leo looked back at us, confused, his little legs struggling to keep up with her furious pace. He looked at me, double quotes, Nana. He asked. I wanted to run to him. I wanted to hold him, but I couldn't. I sat frozen in my chair, tears streaming down my face. The front door slammed. Silence rushed back into the house. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was empty. Marcus stood there, breathing hard, staring at the door. Then he looked at the table, at the pork chops getting cold, at the empty chair where his wife used to sit. He looked at me. Mom, he whispered, and then he collapsed. He fell to his knees on the rug, put his head in his hands, and wept. He cried like a child. He cried for the 5 years he had lost. He cried for the son that wasn't his. I got up. I walked around the table. I sat on the floor next to him and wrapped my arms around my son. I rocked him while he shook, just like I did when he was a baby. I've got you, I whispered. I've got you. It's over. The lie is over. We sat there on the dining room floor for a long time. The food went cold. The wine went unopened. The deed to the house stayed in my purse. We had lost everything that night. But we had found the truth. And the truth, as bitter as it tasted, was the only thing that could set us free. The sun rose over my house the next morning with a cruel, cheerful brightness that felt like an insult to the wreckage inside. I hadn't slept. I had spent the night sitting in the armchair in the living room, watching my 30-year-old son sleep on the sofa, curled up in a fetal position like he was 5 years old again. He had cried until he physically couldn't anymore, until his body just shut down from the exhaustion of grief. Every time he twitched or whimpered in his sleep, my heart broke a little more. I wanted to fix it. I wanted to bake him a cake or buy him a toy or tell him it was just a bad dream. But I couldn't fix this. There is no band-aid for finding out your entire life is a lie. There is no kiss that makes paternity fraud better. When Marcus finally woke up around 10 o'clock, he didn't say a word. He just sat up, rubbed his swollen eyes, and stared at the wall. He looked like a ghost. The light inside him, that optimistic, trusting spark that Jasmine had exploited for 5 years, was gone. Snuffed out coffee. I asked, my voice soft. He nodded. I brought him a mug. He held it with both hands, letting the steam warm his face. I have to go back, he whispered, to the house. Yeah, my clothes, my laptop, my everything is there. I'm coming with you, I said. And we're calling the sheriff for a civil standby. Mom, we don't need the police, he said, wincing. I just want to get my stuff and leave. I don't want a scene. Jasmine is a scene waiting to happen. Marcus, I said. And that house is in my name. If she destroys it, she's destroying my property. We aren't going in there alone. We drove to Willow Creek in my car. Marcus refused to drive the Honda. He said he never wanted to sit in it again. As we pulled into the subdivision, the neighborhood looked exactly the same as it always did, sprinklers hissing, birds chirping, Amazon delivery trucks making rounds. It was terrifying how normal everything looked when our world had completely imploded. When we pulled into the driveway, the garage door was open. Jasmine's car was there. The trunk popped. She was loading boxes. We got out. The sheriff's deputy I had called pulled up right behind us. He stepped out, adjusting his belt. Mrs. King? He asked, civil standby. Yes, officer, I said. My son needs to retrieve his personal effects, and I need to inspect my property. The tenant is leaving. We walked up the driveway. Jasmine saw the cop car and froze. She was holding a box of what looked like Marcus's sneaker collection. She dropped it on the concrete. Really, Vanessa? She shouted, her voice echoing off the brick facade. You brought the cops. You think I'm going to steal the copper wiring? I don't know what you're capable of, Jasmine, I said calmly. Yesterday, I didn't think you were capable of passing off another man's child as my grandson. I'm done taking chances. She glared at me, then looked at Marcus. Her face softened instantly. It was like watching a snake shed its skin in real time. She put on the sad wife mask. Yes, she said, walking toward him, her hands outstretched. Baby, please. Can we just talk? Without your mother? Without the police. We need to figure this out. For Leo, Marcus flinched when she said the name. He stepped back, putting me between him and her. There's nothing to figure out, he said, his voice raspy. The test figured it out. 0% Jasmine. 0 tests can be wrong. She cried, tears springing to her eyes on command. Laboratories make mistakes. Trey ... Trey meant nothing to me. You're the one who was there. You're the one who cut the cord. You're his daddy. I'm his victim, Marcus said. It was the strongest thing I had ever heard him say. I was a prop in your play, Jasmine, and the curtain just came down. He walked past her into the garage and into the house. The officer followed him. I stayed in the driveway with Jasmine. She stopped crying the second Marcus was out of sight. She wiped her face, and the venom returned. You think you won, don't you? She hissed at me. You think you saved him? You didn't save him. You destroyed his family. You took a father away from a 5-year-old boy. How do you sleep at night? I slept just fine last night. I lied. Because I knew the truth. And truth is the best pillow. As for Leo, you took his father away, Jasmine. You took his real father away 5 years ago when you decided Trey wasn't rich enough or stable enough for the lifestyle you wanted. You stole Leo's birthright and sold it to my son for a down payment on a house. Trey is a loser. She spat. He's in and out of jail. He has 3 other kids. You wanted me to give Leo that life? I gave him a good life. I gave him this neighborhood. I gave him private school. You gave him a lie, I said, and lies have an expiration date. Yours just expired. I walked past her and went inside. The house was chaos. Jasmine hadn't just been packing. She had been looting. The TV was gone from the wall mount. The espresso machine I bought them for Christmas was boxed up. She was stripping the place. "Put the espresso machine back," I said. "That was a gift." She screamed from the hallway. "It was a gift to the couple residing in this home," I said. "That couple no longer exists. And since I paid for it and I own the house, it stays. You can take your clothes. You can take your personal toiletries. You can take Leo's toys. Everything else stays," she screamed. She threw a Vesa cheap one from Target, thankfully against the wall. The officer stepped in. "Ma'am, calm down," he warned, "or you'll be leaving in the back of my car." For the next hour, we watched her pack. It was a slow, painful process. Marcus came downstairs with 2 suitcases of clothes and his gaming system. That was it. 5 years of marriage, and all he had to show for it fit in the trunk of a car. Then I heard it. "Daddy?" I froze. I looked toward the top of the stairs. Leo was standing there. He was wearing his pajamas' little dinosaur prints. He was rubbing his eyes. He looked confused. He looked scared. "Daddy, why are you packing?" he asked. "Are we going on a trip?" My heart shattered into a million pieces. I had to grab the kitchen counter to keep from falling down. This was the cost. This was the price of the truth. The innocent bystander. Marcus dropped his suitcase. He looked up at the boy who had his smile, his laugh, his mannerisms learned, not inherited. The boy he had tucked in every night for 5 years. "Hey, buddy," Marcus whispered. Leo ran down the stairs. He ran right past Jasmine and hugged Marcus's legs. Up, up. Marcus hesitated. I saw the war in his eyes. His brain knew the DNA results. His brain knew this child was the product of a betrayal. But his heart remembered the weight of that boy in his arms. He reached down and picked Leo up. He buried his face in Leo's neck. "I love you, Leo," Marcus choked out. "You know that, right? I love you so much. I love you too, Daddy. Can we go to the park?" Jasmine stepped forward. She saw the weakness. She saw the opening. "See?" She said softly to Marcus. "He needs you. You're his world. You can't just walk away from this. Blood is biology, Marcus. Love is real. We can fix this. We can go to therapy. Just tell your mother to leave. Tell her we're staying." It was the ultimate manipulation. She was using the child as a human shield. Marcus looked at Leo. Then he looked at Jasmine. He looked at her with a clarity I hadn't seen in 5 years. He saw the calculation in her eyes. He saw the trap. He slowly, gently set Leo down on the floor. "Go to your mom, Leo," Marcus said. "But Daddy, Go to your mom," he said, his voice cracking. Leo looked confused, his lip trembling. He walked over to Jasmine and grabbed her hand. Marcus stood up straight. He looked at Jasmine. "You're right," Marcus said. "I love him. I love him more than anything. And that's why I can't stay. Because every time I look at him, I see the lie you told me. Every time I look at him, I see the years you stole from me. I can't raise him, Jasmine. Because I can't look at you. You're abandoning him." Jasmine shrieked. "You're a monster." "No," Marcus said. "I'm a victim. And I'm leaving." He picked up his suitcases. He walked to the door. He didn't look back. "Come on, Mom," he said to me. I looked at Leo one last time. He was crying now, silent tears running down his cheeks. I wanted to vomit. I wanted to scream. I wanted to give him a lollipop and tell him it would be okay. But it wouldn't be okay. Not for a long time. "I'll send you the eviction notice for the remaining items." I said to Jasmine, "You have 30 days to vacate the property. I suggest you call Trey. Maybe he has a spare room." I walked out the door. We got in the car. Marcus slumped in the passenger seat, staring out the window as we backed out of the driveway. He didn't cry this time. He just looked empty. Did I do the right thing? He whispered as we drove away. "Yes," I said, though my own heart felt like lead. "You saved yourself, Marcus. You can't save everyone. Sometimes the only person you can save is the one in the mirror. We drove back to my house in silence. The war was over. The truth was out. But the casualties were high that night. Jasmine launched her counterattack. I was sitting on the couch with Marcus, trying to get him to eat some soup, when my phone started blowing up. Notifications from Facebook, Instagram, text messages from friends I hadn't spoken to in years. I opened Facebook. There it was, a long, rambling post from Jasmine. A picture of Leo crying, holding a sign that said, "I miss my daddy." "My heart is broken," the caption read. "Today my husband walked out on his 5-year-old son because his controlling, evil mother forced him to. She cut off our money, she starved us, and then she poisoned his mind with lies about DNA just to break up our happy home. Marcus King abandoned his child because he cares more about his inheritance than his own flesh and blood. Please pray for Leo. He doesn't understand why his daddy and Nana hate him." It had 200 likes. Comments were pouring in. "Oh my God, praying for you? That mother-in-law sounds like a demon. Deadbeat dads are the worst." She was spinning the narrative. She was playing the victim card, the single mother card, the sympathy card. She was trying to destroy our reputation in the court of public opinion because she had lost in the court of facts. Marcus saw the post over my shoulder. He flinched. "Don't read the comments," I said, taking the phone away. "Everyone thinks I'm a monster," he said. "People believe what they want to believe," I said. "But we have the truth, and we have the receipts." I walked over to my computer. I didn't comment on her post. I didn't argue with the strangers calling my son a deadbeat. I simply posted one photo. It was a picture of the paternity test results. The header, the names redacted except for father and child. And that big, bold number, 0.0%. I captioned it, "The truth is not an attack. It is a correction. Paternity fraud is real. My son is grieving the child he thought was his. Please respect his privacy while he heals from 5 years of deception." I hit post. Within 10 minutes. Jasmine's post was deleted. Her profile went private. The truth, it turns out, is a very powerful disinfectant. But as the internet drama faded, the real pain remained. Marcus was sleeping in his childhood bedroom again. The nursery I had built in my heart for Leo was empty. The money was safe, the house was safe, but the family, the family was gone. I sat in the dark living room, listening to the silence. I had won. I had exposed the lie. I had saved my son's financial future, but I didn't feel like a winner. I felt like a survivor of a natural disaster, looking at the rubble and wondering how we were ever going to rebuild, and I knew the hardest part was still to come. Letting go of the boy who wasn't mine. The 30 days following the revelation were a slow, grinding war of attrition. You might think that after the explosion of truth, after the DNA test sat on the table like a smoking gun, that Jasmine would just pack her bags and disappear into the night out of shame. But shame is a currency Jasmine didn't trade in. She traded in spite. She dragged out the eviction process until the very last legal second. She contested the notice. She claimed she couldn't find a moving truck. She claimed she had a migraine. She claimed the air quality in the house was making her sick. Every day was a new excuse, a new delay, a new attempt to bleed just a little more patience out of us. But I was done being patient. I had my lawyer, David, bless that man's heart file every motion, serve every paper, and ensure that when the clock struck noon on the 30th day, the sheriff would be standing there with a pair of handcuffs. She wasn't on the other side of the curb. The move-out day finally arrived. It was a gray, drizzly Tuesday, the kind of weather that seeps into your bones and makes you feel old. Marcus and I sat in my car across the street, drinking coffee from a thermos, watching the moving truck Jasmine had finally hired. She wasn't lifting a finger, of course. She was standing on the porch, directing the movers to poor guys who looked like they regretted answering her. Craigslist ad pointing at boxes and shouting instructions. She was wearing that same white tracksuit she had worn the day she bammed me. A final act of defiance when the last box was loaded. When the house stood empty and echoing, she walked down the driveway holding Leo's hand. That was the moment I had been dreading. That was the moment I had been steeling myself for. I got out of the car. Marcus stayed inside. He couldn't do it. He couldn't look at the boy he had thought was his son, the boy he had named, and say goodbye. It was too much for a man who had just had his heart surgically removed without anesthesia. So it was up to me. I walked across the street. The rain was misting on my glasses. Jasmine saw me coming and stiffened, pulling Leo closer to her leg. "Check the house," she spat. "We didn't steal the copper, though God knows we earned it for putting up with you people." "I'm not here to check the house, Jasmine," I said, my voice quiet. "I'm here to say goodbye to the innocent party in this mess." I crouched down. My knees cracked on the wet pavement. I was eye level with Leo. He looked confused. He was wearing a raincoat I had bought him 2 years ago, the sleeves riding up his wrists because he had grown so much. He was clutching a stuffed dinosaur a T-Rex Marcus had one for him at a carnival. "Hi, Nana," he whispered. "Are you coming to the new house?" My throat closed up. I felt like I had swallowed a bag of broken glass. How do you explain paternity fraud to a 5-year-old? How do you explain that the daddy he loves isn't his daddy? And the Nana he loves isn't his Nana, because his mommy told a lie before he was even born? You don't. You just lie a little bit more, but this time you lie to protect him. "No, baby," I said, reaching out to smooth his hair. "I can't come to the new house. Nana has to stay here and take care of things. Is Daddy coming?" I looked back at my car. Marcus had his head resting on the steering wheel. "Daddy has to go away for a while too," I said, tears mixing with the rain on my cheeks. "But listen to me, Leo. You are a good boy. You are smart and you are kind and you are strong. None of this. None of the grown-up yelling. None of it is your fault. Do you understand? You are perfect." He nodded, though I knew he didn't understand. "I love you, Nana." "I love you too, Leo," I choked out. "Be good." I stood up. I couldn't look at him anymore or I would collapse. I looked at Jasmine. For a second, just a fraction of a second, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Regret? Fear? Maybe just the realization that she was now truly on her own, without the safety net of the King family bank account. "Where are you going?" I asked her. Not because I cared, but because I needed to know he had a roof. "My sister's in Atlanta," she said, looking away. Trey is going to meet us there. He wants to see him." Trey? The biological father. The hazel-eyed ghost who had haunted my photo albums. "Good," I said. "Let him step up. It's his turn." "You're cold, Vanessa," she said, shaking her head. "You're a cold woman. A warm woman who was forced to build an ice castle to survive you," I replied. "Goodbye, Jasmine. Don't contact us again." She loaded Leo into her car. I watched him wave from the back seat as they drove away. I waved back until they turned the corner and disappeared from my life forever. I stood there in the rain for a long time, letting the water wash away the last 5 years. Then I turned around, walked back to my car, got in, and told my son to drive. The next 6 months were a blur of rebuilding. We sold the Willow Creek house. I couldn't keep it. Even after the cleaning crew came through. Even after we painted the walls and replaced the carpets, the house felt haunted. Every room held a memory of a lie. The nursery was a monument to a child that wasn't ours. The kitchen was where I had cooked meals for a woman who despised me. So we sold it. We sold it at a loss because the market dipped, but I didn't care. I would have paid someone to take it off my hands just to exorcise the demons. Marcus moved into a small apartment downtown, a studio. It was all he could afford on his own salary, and for the first time in his life, I let him afford it. I didn't co-sign. I didn't buy the furniture. He slept on a mattress on the floor for 3 weeks until he saved up for a bed frame. And you know what? He slept better on that floor than he ever did in the master bedroom of the Colonial. He started therapy, not the couples counseling Jasmine had manipulated. He started unpacking the years of gaslighting, the erosion of his self-esteem. He started to realize that he had worth outside of his wallet and me. I went back to the bakery. I threw myself into the dough and the sugar. I expanded the catering menu. I started teaching a cooking class at the community center on Tuesday nights, the nights I used to babysit. I filled the silence with work and friends and the slow, steady rhythm of a life lived honestly. One afternoon, about 6 months after they left, Marcus walked into the bakery. He looked different. He had lost that soft, anxious look he used to have around Jasmine. He had grown a beard. He was wearing a shirt he had ironed himself. "Hey, Mom," he said, grabbing a cookie from the display case. "I brought you something." He handed me a check. It was for $500. "What's this?" I asked, wiping my hands on my apron. "First installment," he said, "for the lawyer fees. For the DNA test, for everything. Marcus, you don't have to." "I do," he interrupted. "I need to. I need to pay my own way. You've taught me that. A little late, maybe, but I learned." I took the check. I held it like it was made of gold. "I'm proud of you," I said. "I'm proud of me too," he smiled. It was a real smile, not a forced one. "And Mom, I met someone. Just for coffee. Nothing serious, but she has her own job and her own car." We laughed. It was the first time we had laughed about it. The wound had turned into a scar. It was still there. It would always be there. But it wasn't bleeding anymore. I walked to the window of the bakery and looked out at the street. Life was moving on. People were walking by, living their truths and their lies. I thought about Leo. I hoped Trey was good to him. I hoped Jasmine grew up. But mostly, I hoped that one day he would understand that his Nana didn't leave him because she didn't love him. She left him because she loved the truth more. They say blood is thicker than water. But I learned that's not the whole saying. The full quote is, "The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb." The bonds you choose are stronger than the bonds you inherit. Jasmine chose money. I chose truth. Marcus chose himself. I turned the sign on the door too closed. I untied my apron. I locked up the shop. I had lost a grandson, but I had saved my son. I had lost a fortune, but I had regained my dignity. DNA makes you related. Loyalty makes you family. And sometimes you have to cut the branch to save the tree. I got in my car, the one I paid for with my own hard work. And I drove home to a house that was quiet, peaceful, and entirely mine. And for the first time in 5 years, I slept through the night.